We begin the news with development in Venezuela as U.S. President Donald Trump has overseen the removal of Venezuela's leader, Nicolás Maduro, in a move being described as unprecedented in modern international relations. The full details are still emerging, but the manner of Maduro's capture is already raising serious questions about sovereignty, international law, and the future of the rules-based world order, even as many welcome the end of his rule. For News Central, senior international correspondent Afua Hagan now looks at how this happened, why it matters, and why America's allies are watching with growing unease.
Donald Trump's removal of Nicolás Maduro as Venezuela's leader is completely unprecedented. The United States has found ways of forcing out leaders it opposes before, through sanctions, diplomacy, and covert pressure, but never quite like this. Nation-states do not send armed forces into other sovereign countries to seize their leader, least of all the United States, long seen as the guardian of the rules-based international order. The details of what happened are still emerging, but whatever view you take of Nicolás Maduro, the manner of his removal appears to sit uneasily with the principles of international law. Maduro was widely regarded as a disastrous and increasingly illegitimate ruler. He rigged elections, presided over economic collapse, and drove nearly a quarter of Venezuela's population to flee. He relied on repression to cling to power, whilst the resource-rich nation was stripped bare under his kleptocratic rule. Across Latin America, neighbouring governments will publicly express concern, but privately, many are likely to welcome the end of Maduro's reign. America's allies, however, are asking a more uncomfortable question. What does this mean for the rules-based world order? There are reports Maduro may have been handed over by elements of his own security forces, turned by sustained American pressure. That would allow Washington to argue this was an internal transfer of power. But there is little doubt this outcome would not have been possible without the build-up of US military force and intense behind-the-scenes involvement. In the days ahead, the Trump administration will have to convince allies that this episode does not open the door to further violations of international law and that the end justifies the means. It will also have to spell out exactly how and where Nicolás Maduro will now face justice. For many allies, the relief at his removal is real, but so too is the unease about how it was done. For News Central, I'm Afua Hagan.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the United States will temporarily run Venezuela until safe transactions can take place. Trump also said that major U.S. oil companies will operate in the country and no U.S. troops or equipment were lost during the operation. He described the strike as one of the most stunning and powerful displays of American military might and emphasized that the action was necessary to protect U.S. citizens and prevent foreign powers from undermining American interests. The announcement has raised global concerns over Venezuela's sovereignty, regional stability, and international law. Analysts warn that direct U.S. involvement could destabilize Latin America and strain relations with countries allied to Maduro, including Russia, China, and Iran.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious.
In the meantime, Venezuela's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, says the government is yet to confirm the whereabouts of President Nicolás Maduro and the First Lady Cecilia Flores, following claims by the United States of a major military operation. U.S. President Donald Trump announced early Saturday that American forces carried out what he described as a large-scale strike on Venezuela, claiming that President Maduro and his wife had been captured and taken out of the country. Reacting to the statement, Rodriguez said Venezuelan authorities have no verified information on the president's location. She accused the United States of carrying out attacks across several parts of the country, alleging that government officials, military personnel, and civilians were killed in the operation. Meanwhile, the European Union has called for calm and respect for international law as tensions rise over reported United States military action in Venezuela. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said the bloc is closely monitoring developments after the Venezuelan government accused the U.S. of attacking installations in several parts of the country. In a statement shared on social media, Kallas said she had spoken with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as the European Union's ambassador in Caracas. While repeating the EU's long-held position that President Nicolás Maduro lacks democratic legitimacy, she stressed that any action must follow international law. Kallas added the principles of the United Nations Charter must be respected at all times and urged all sides to show restraint. Still on development in Venezuela, Venezuelans leaving the United States have gathered in Miami to celebrate after President Donald Trump claimed that U.S. forces captured Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. Celebrations followed Trump's announcement that American forces carried out military strikes on Caracas and other Venezuelan cities and had taken Maduro into custody. The crowds waved Venezuelan flags, sang songs, and expressed hope for political change in their home country, with some saying the dreams of Venezuelans abroad came true.
Venezuela amanece libre, mira ese amanecer, es mucha emoción, es demasiado. 27 años esperando este momento y ya cayó, por fin cayó.
Hoy 3 de enero se cumplieron los sueños de los venezolanos en el extranjero. Me siento súper feliz porque cayó el régimen, cayó el narco régimen. ¡Viva Venezuela libre!
Obviamente se esperaba, no había forma después de todas las cosas que han hecho en los últimos meses de que ese régimen cayera. Ya era hora, después de tantos años, mucha gente feliz, mucha gente se va a devolver con su familia.
Estoy celebrando la salida de Nicolás Maduro. Gracias a Dios, primeramente, al presidente Trump y a María Corina Machado.
Now, to discuss the developments in Venezuela, we are joined by global affairs analyst Ejike Okpa. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start off.
Thank you for having me.
We're also being joined by political analyst Professor Chris Osike. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. I want to start with you, Mr. Ejike Okpa. With a sitting president captured by a foreign power, does this constitute a direct violation of Venezuela's sovereignty under international law?
It depends on who you ask, but I want to say something. This is not unprecedented. It's happened before. Manuel Noriega was, removed, and he served his jail term in U.S. before he was released, and he passed away. If you read the book Overthrow by Stephen Kinzer, it will show how America, before they passed the law, no change of power in any country, how America was doing it. Saddam Hussein was, the same thing happened. Libya, the same thing happened. So this is not an unprecedented thing. I know people have various reactions. You talked about UN and European Union and Russia and China. The question is, if they are so concerned about what was going on in Venezuela, how come they didn't have intelligence? To at least try to go in there and stop what America did. So this is just, medicine after death. America wanted to do it and America did it. My point in all of this is every president now is native to that particular country. Instead of engaging on a global stunt, game, trying to, wag your finger at the superpower, focus on doing the right thing for your people. That's what matters. It's not to engage in a game of cat and mouse. At the end of the day, their own military couldn't even defend them. I mean, look at how they captured him, from presidential palace to prison. There's nothing anybody's going to do. It's very unfortunate because Trump had told him, resign, get out of there. He thought by beating his chest like Saddam Hussein did, he was going to withstand American forces, and America did it. This is part of the M factor. When you look at the M factor that enables America to do what they do, this is one of it, and it's called manifest destiny. There are other M's, but again, it's a good New Year gift to the Venezuelans. You could see them jubilating in Florida. There's going to be reaction, plus or minus, but the point is that the guy has been humiliated. Every other president in the world, take notice. Focus on doing the right thing for your country. This international law about diplomacy doesn't really apply.
All right, Mr. Ejike, but before I move on to ask Professor Osike the next question, you just said that, this is a lesson that a lot of leaders across the world should learn in terms of taking care of their own people. But if you look at the situation of things, do you really think that is really what President Trump is about, really? About, ensuring that the people or the Venezuelans actually have a taste of good leadership, or it's really about the interest of the United States?
Well, all of the above. All of the above. If you get your house in order, it will be very difficult for anybody to come in there and interfere, to enslave you or to colonize you. Let's get this straight. What most of these countries haven't gotten their houses in order. They have abused their own people. You see what happened in Nigeria. See the airstrike in Nigeria. What did Tinubu say? Has Tinubu showed up to say, hey, I was aware of this, I approved it. Instead, he's gone abroad. He's not even in Nigeria for the New Year celebration. So again, it's lesson to be learned. Focus on doing the right thing for your own people, and nobody else is going to come and mess with you. The Venezuelans wanted this. Maybe they approached the leadership of Trump and say, hey, we want this to happen, and it happened. Again, medicine after death. You get your house in order, nobody's going to come messing with you. And this is the lesson that I want the countries to do. Focus on your own people. Take the time, address the needs in your own. Yeah, people think, okay, Venezuela has oil. Venezuela doesn't produce more oil than Texas on a barrels per day. So it's not about the oil. It's about a president who thought he was going to do as he wished. Who was abusing his own people, who was sending drugs to America, or was an accessory to that drug being sent to America. And he was told to resign. He was told to step out, but he didn't, thinking that he can stand up. Just like, again, go look at 36 years ago what happened to Noriega. And then he was captured, and he did his time in a prison in Miami. So this guy is going to do his own time in Miami.
All right, let me come to you now, Professor Osike. Does this action establish a precedent, where powerful nations can unilaterally remove foreign leaders without international authorization?
Oh, well, good evening again, and thank you for having me. Sorry. I agree, first of all, with my co-panelists that this is not unprecedented. It has happened before. I also agree with him that, states need to do better, especially those in the global south, but doing good in your state has not prevented this current U.S. administration from interfering in the affairs of other states. And South Africa, where I'm sitting, is a good example of that, right? But yeah, to answer your question directly, this airstrike on Venezuela last night presents a complex blend of security, legal, and geopolitical issues that present multiple challenges for global order, and one of them is the precedents that it will set. And normatively speaking, this action, like the one they did over 30 years ago against Noriega of Panama, challenges post-war 1945 restraint on unilateral military coercion and poses implications for future interstate relations and conflict resolutions. There are other legal, regional implications as well for all of these. For instance, legally, it sits outside of clear international paradigms that govern the use of force, and it also raises constitutional questions within the U.S. context, apart from the clear sovereignty issues that it raises. And then lastly, regionally, these kinds of military intervention risk destabilizing fragile political balances in Latin America that will erode, trust among neighbors and provoking a broader diplomatic backlash, even though Nicolás Maduro was not a very popular president in Latin America, especially after the last election that he stole in 2024. So to summarize my answer, it is a military invasion of a sovereign country by another, and it is illegal as it contravenes both international law, U.S. domestic law. For example, the Constitution of the U.S. Makes it compulsory for a U.S. president to abide by international law instruments such as the UN Charter and the Convention of Human and Political Rights. And then also the role of Congress in authorizing such military invasion was bypassed in this case. So But when you consider, and this is where I'm going to pivot to my panelists, when you consider the responsibility to protect doctrine of international law and the relief this has brought to a majority of Venezuelans, including the almost 10 million of its diaspora, there can be a case for this kind of intervention, right? But the normative question here is whether we can resolve an illegality, that is Maduro, with another illegality that breaks the international law.
All right, Professor Osike, still dwelling on you now. How does international law treat, the arrest of a sitting head of state outside, recognized judicial frameworks?
Look, first of all, it's not allowed. By international law does not allow for the president of a sovereign state to be, abducted, like the way we have seen Nicolás Maduro abducted, even though this happened in 1989 under Panama. It requires that there should be an agreement by the United Nations Security Council, for this kind of thing to happen, and this did not happen in this case. So that's one of the ways that this particular action has actually run foul of international law.
All right, let me go back to you now, Ejike Okpa, and to also correct you on what you said as regards stating that Texas, produces has more oil reserves than Venezuela. I'd like to correct you on that one. Venezuela actually has way more than Texas, but not to dwell on that. Moving on to
production
other.
Per day. Production per day. Production. Daily production.
Daily production per day is what you're talking about.
Yes, not the reserve.
Okay, all right. That's clear enough. But you were talking earlier about the fact that leaders should pay attention to their people, and you're saying that perhaps that's part of the reasons why it was easy for the United States to get the attention of the people of Venezuela, and now the United States have moved in. But aside that, there were also conversations around the fact that United States of America and even the EU did not recognize Maduro as being a legitimate leader. So my question is, does non-recognition of a government provide legal grounds for the forceful removal of its leader?
Hey, look, even in Africa, where is Charles Taylor today? Where is Charles Taylor, the Liberian president? Was it not Obasanjo that helped him to be captured and he was shipped to The Hague and got tried and he's in jail today? So all this international thing and UN and Security Council, the point is this thing is not the first time it's happened. Again, my whole thing is you get your house in order, you don't have to worry about your neighbor. We now have a lot of presidents or prime ministers who just go out there to put a show on the stage, and at the end of the day, even their own military cannot defend them. If Maduro Maduro had listened to the counsel of, even his fellow Latin American people and say resign or step aside or, take an exit, this thing wouldn't have happened. But when he wagged his fingers, when he said, I can stand up to America, then he stood up to America, and we see what is going on. So this, issue of international law and, judicial this and judicial that, the world is not a fair playing ground. If you have the power, sometimes they flex it. So if you recognize your weakness, then what you need to do is align with somebody who is going to cause you an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment. And, embarrassment is not accidental, because it was not just Trump waking up one day and say, hey, we're going to do this. There was some planning, and it happened, and even the Venezuelan, did you hear the Venezuelan military put up a fight? So my whole point is, yes, there's going to be reaction of yes and no, America this, America that. The point is that he wanted to do it, and he did it. Medicine after death. Let us now sulk, let us now, cry or, have our tail like a dog and move on. But focus on your country, people. Look around what your own people are saying, and then make sure you can address their concern. There are no perfect countries in the world, but at least, like we say in America, in pursuit of happiness. It doesn't mean happiness is going to be guaranteed, but at least you are making the effort to pursue it. Venezuela guy was just making it look like this is his own country, just like Tinubu is doing in Nigeria. Where is he? No, Nigerians, have you asked the question? Your president is outside of the country on a new year because he wants to go attend the summit. So when things happen, there's always the reason why it's happening. America is not out there to go oppress anybody or suppress anybody. But again, when the people invite them, they invite them. You look at what happened in Iraq. It's not the first time. Paul Bremer was the sole administrator when America took over Iraq, and after a while they handed it to Iraq. You decide what you do with your country, but make the effort to allow your people to live a life that is reasonable for them, not where the president, will colonize, take over the mineral and is spending it with his families or his friends. That's not what leadership is all about.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for having this conversation. But before I let you go, I'd love to ask one more question to Mr. Professor Osike, and that is the fact that where does the United Nations stand in all of this? What does this development say about the effectiveness and the authority of the United Nations and other multilateral institutions?
It's a lame duck. It's largely controlled by, superpowers that have veto power to do as they please and are absolved from their own complicity in some of the chaos that we see. So the United Nations and the Security Council is not going to be able to call America to order in this particular case. The best it can do is to call for a Security Council meeting, and then there'll be a vote to denounce the action of the US. And of course, there will be those within the Security Council that will support what it has done, especially, but however, we must know that France is not going to probably support what they've done, because the president has given a statement to that effect, condemning this illegal invasion of Venezuela. China and Russia have signaled that they will not support it. So if the UK doesn't, then it can be a majority decision to condemn it. But again, to whatever decision they come to can be vetoed by the United States. So that underscores the ineffectiveness of the United Nations, in addressing problems like this, especially when one of those who are responsible for global security and the global security architecture and making rules around these things are the ones themselves that are breaking the law. And the fact that it has happened before does not make it right. That's one point that I really need to stress in this discussion.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, for having this conversation with me.
Well, thank you again. Like I said, take care of your house and nobody will mess with you. That's all this is all about.
All right.